The siren song of instant gratification is a whisper that can ultimately deafen you to the roar of your true potential. A quick hit of pleasure that costs you the boundless freedom of self-mastery. This relentless chase for immediate reward, epitomized by the casual surrender to ejaculatory release, is a neurobiological trap, a vicious feedback loop, hijacking your brain's most essential wiring. If you are serious about breaking this cycle and claiming your mental and energetic sovereignty, you need a brotherhood, a dedicated space for this journey. So before we delve deeper into the science of impulse control, make sure to click the link in the description and join our private Telegram channel right now. We live in a world engineered for immediate dopamine release, from notifications pinging our phones to high-calorie, low-nutrient food readily available, and this constant overstimulation dulls the sensitivity of your reward pathways. The brain's limbic system, particularly the nucleus accumbens, which is central to the reward circuit, is constantly bombarded. It's creating an ever-increasing tolerance, a phenomenon analogous to drug addiction where more of the substance is needed to achieve the same effect. Semen retention, at its core, is a deliberate, powerful act of delayed gratification, directly countering this impulse-driven culture. This practice forces a neurological shift, retraining your prefrontal cortex (PFC), the brain's executive control center, to assert dominance over the more primal, impulsive limbic structures. The PFC, responsible for planning, reasoning, and inhibiting inappropriate behavior, effectively gains strength through this intentional resistance. A form of neuroplasticity in action, strengthening the white matter connections. When you intentionally abstain from ejaculation, you're not simply withholding a physical act, you're managing a massive surge of neurochemicals. Ejaculation is the climax of the sexual response cycle, a deeply ingrained biological drive. And the accompanying orgasm triggers an enormous sudden flood of neurotransmitters, most notably dopamine, prolactin, and oxytocin. The immediate massive spike in dopamine, the primary seeking or motivation molecule, creates an intense, though brief, feeling of reward, but the subsequent crash is where the real cost lies. Following this peak, there is a substantial refractory period, often mediated by the release of prolactin, hormone associated with sexual satiety, and a reduction in postcoital motivation, which is the scientific basis for the post-nut clarity and the associated drop in drive. By retaining, you prevent this massive, depleting dopamine spike and the resultant prolactin-induced crash, leading instead to a more stable, higher baseline level of motivated energy. This sustained, moderate level of dopamine, rather than the sharp peak-and-trough cycle, is what cultivates deep focus, sustained motivation, and an amplified desire to pursue challenging long-term goals. The psychological dimension of this control is equally profound. Resisting the most fundamental base impulse builds an inner fortress of self-discipline that cascades into every area of your life. This enhanced self-control, technically known as an improvement in delay discounting, means you are less likely to choose a smaller, immediate reward over a larger, delayed one, a trait consistently correlated with long-term success in academics, career, finance, and health, according to decades of psychological research, most famously, the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment. The energy you conserve is not merely physical. It is a redirection of potent psychic and hormonal fuel. The body's reproductive system is highly resource-intensive, and the retention of seminal fluid, rich in nutrients like zinc, potassium, and magnesium, is an ancient concept in traditional practices like Taoism and Ayurveda, where it is believed to conserve Jing, or vital life essence. While modern Western medicine often lacks definitive, large-scale studies on the long-term biological effects of semen retention, anecdotal evidence overwhelmingly supports the perceived increase in vitality, focus, and drive among practitioners, often described as transmutation. This redirected energy fosters what psychologists call flow state, a deeply focused, immersive mental state where productivity peaks, which becomes more accessible because your brain isn't constantly seeking the next immediate fix to compensate for a depleted reward system. The struggle against instant gratification is fundamentally a battle for your time and attention, the two most valuable resources you possess. Every time you choose the temporary high, the easy dopamine hit, over the difficult, sustained effort required for meaningful creation, you are selling your freedom cheaply. This habitual indulgence in love-for pleasure weakens your willpower muscle, a concept supported by ego depletion theory, which suggests that self-control is a finite resource that can be exhausted by repeated acts of resistance. However, a newer understanding suggests that perceived willpower fatigue is often a cognitive choice, a result of having the wrong mindset about the resource. Semen retention, by making a clear, non-negotiable choice regarding a high-impact impulse, strengthens the belief in your capacity for self-control, effectively inoculating you against future temptation and challenging the notion of fixed willpower. It fundamentally changes your identity from someone who is a slave to their urges to someone who is a master of their internal world. Moreover, the neurobiological changes associated with the practice may include positive modulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, the body's central stress response system. Reduced compulsive behavior and anxiety are frequently reported, suggesting a calming regulatory effect on stress hormones like cortisol, potentially leading to greater emotional resilience and equanimity. The practice is not about repression, it's about conscious control and sublimation. The psychological process of channeling base instinctual drives into socially acceptable and creative outlets, the raw, primal sexual energy, rather than being discharged impulsively, is contained and redirected into intellectual pursuits, artistic creation, physical training, or entrepreneurial endeavors, lending a powerful, almost magnetic intensity to these efforts. This is the true freedom. The liberation from the tyranny of your own biology, the ability to choose your response rather than being driven by instinct. It allows you to build a life based on your highest values and long-term vision, not on the fleeting whims of the moment. The constant drip feed of immediate pleasure ultimately leads to a state of learned helplessness and stagnation, where the individual lacks the grit and endurance necessary to face the arduous, non-linear path of genuine achievement. By committing to semen retention, you are signing a contract with your future, higher self, agreeing to make the hard choice now for the greater reward later. This consistent application of discipline builds character, integrity, and an unshakable confidence that radiates outwards, influencing how others perceive and interact with you. It is the silent, internal commitment that ultimately produces profound, visible, external results. The journey of conquering instant gratification is the master key to unlocking your full human potential, turning base desire into spiritual and material success. Remember, every step, every day of conscious effort is a victory. If this message resonated with you, and you find value in the insights and knowledge shared here, I sincerely request you to contribute to the mission by using the thanks button below. Every single contribution, no matter how small, is deeply appreciated and vital in supporting the creation of more empowering content like this.